why Tony Busby, the lawyer who filed this against Jay-Z, is going to see the most fierce response to anything he's ever done. You better be buttoned up, because the institutions that will protect Jay-Z, it's far different than anything that we've seen. Lots of different places, cultural places, business places, a different class of people will protect Jay-Z because of what it is that he represents, and to be quite frank, should I say, some of the access he allows those people to Black culture. Okay, so that's one thing. Tony Busby will get a different type of pushback now. The only other things I thought was this: if you look at the whole case and the way things played out, they made Jay-Z and his people aware of this, and then they wanted to enter into a mediation. That didn't happen. The Roc Nation Jay-Z side said there'll be none of that. There wasn't a direct dollar amount asked. However, they wanted to talk. It's a civil case, so there's nothing else to talk about besides money. They said no. Called their bluff. They made an addendum to it, put his name in it. All right. You can look at that however many ways you want to look at it. That they were looking for a payday from Jay-Z, or at least to start the conversation about a payday from Jay-Z. He said no, and so they put his name in the lawsuit. You can look at it as whoever this Jane Doe is didn't want her name attached to this, didn't want what was going to come with entanglement with such a cultural titan, so they wanted to do it on the hush-hush. Jay-Z didn't want that, and they said no. I think the more interesting thing is where this leaves people in terms of their relationship to luminaries that they've always admired. Had it not been for the Cassie video, a sizable portion of our culture and media writ large would not believe any of the allegations against Puff.
Yeah.
They would say Puff was freaky. They would say Puff was, his carnal appetite was more than most, but they wouldn't believe that he was capable of some of the things that were alleged in that lawsuit and in others. Now we're to the point where whatever you say about him, people believe it, no matter what it is. With Jay-Z, there is a level of discipline, control, smoothness, suaveness. There's a level of there's an air of royalty to him that a lot of people live and die with. Like, niggas love Jay-Z.
He is
like,
the patron saint of the hood. Like, yeah, for sure.
He is the best case scenario for so many of them. That's a hill that a lot of people are willing to die on. There is nothing that has been released right now that should change any of that for anyone. And this is what I mean. If you loved Jay-Z Saturday night, you can still love him today. This is an allegation. If you choose to believe that men in powerful situations endeavor into activity like this all the time, and you believe the account of this, that's okay too. We should not be making any moral judgments based upon who believes this, who doesn't believe this. We talked to Megan Cuniff on the show. A question I asked her is, how much of an investigation do you think Tony Busby's people did before they brought this? Like, what do they have? She's like, they have some photographs. They have some, this is something that happened in the year 2000, but it's going to be the victim's account and whatever the third person that was in this room said as well. The third person is apparently another female celebrity.
So I want to ask you about that, by the way, just as a
Yeah.
side track, because this was brought to my attention. I haven't read all the details yet, but I did read the earlier draft of the complaint. A couple of these cases have an unnamed celebrity woman in them. In my household, we got our fingers crossed, praying it ain't a certain, somebody, or this person or that person. Do we have a sense that this is the same person across these cases? Do you have a sense that this, like, that it's one person who's like part of the crew that's witnessing all this horrific stuff that's being accused, or is that just part of the legal strategy here from Busby to always say there was another person there who saw it too?
I don't know. I think everyone's going to have different thoughts on who might be close to either of those guys, and they're going to use the time frame and their associations at that time to speculate. Eventually, the name of that third person will be released, or it will be made public, and then when that happens, we'll get a better understanding. But we're in such a murky time right now. For the people who aren't involved in celebrity life or covering celebrity stuff, we're doing our best to try to figure out which way to go about this makes us good people. Like,
yeah,
which way to go about this makes us okay, not the bad people. Meaning, are you a good person if you say, I need actual physical evidence or the adjudication of this before I would believe this? Or are you the good person if you say, somebody said that this happened, so that it happened? So people are trying to figure out how they're supposed to deal with this and how they're supposed to look at this. And I think it's a more interesting situation from that standpoint, because Jay-Z's problems are Jay-Z's problems. It's a more interesting standpoint in what it says about us than it is anything else.
You worked at TMZ. You saw celebrity rollouts for all kinds of stuff. I remember one time you kind of broke down the sex tape release strategy, where you knew when a sex tape was being released by a celebrity because they wanted it released and they wanted to kind of pretend they didn't. And you knew when someone was really shocked by it, by how they handled it. Is there anything about the way Jay-Z is handling this that is consistent with or different than other celebrities who we've determined did it or didn't do it? Is there anything about this that you see following a pattern?
Fantastic question. I would say the aggressiveness in which he responded is interesting. Normally, when someone is aggressive in their response, they're aggressive in saying, there is no way I would have ever done this. Jay-Z assumes you don't believe this.
Is that a strategy, or do you think he really just assumes that?
No, he doesn't think anyone would ever believe this about him.
Okay.
I mean, it says in the response, the only people that are going to believe that I had anything to do with something like this are the kooks and the idiots. It's laughable. So he assumes you won't believe this about him. Once again, Jay-Z's bulletproof veneer. He didn't take the time to say, I've always maintained this, and I've never done this, and I won't do that, and I won't be involved in this, and I won't have any of that. He didn't take the time to do that. He said, the accusation is laughable, and Tony Busby, I'm going to take you apart. That is responding in a way that I don't quite remember. I can't think of anyone who, in their response, didn't offer a vehement denial and explanation of their character. Now, I'm not saying he didn't offer that because he's guilty. I'm saying he didn't offer it because he feels like we know him.
Yeah.
So it normally you get something like this, and there's been so many guys that have been accused of stuff like that. You get, I would never, but no, laughable. Let me tell you what I'm gonna do to you. Let me tell you what I'm gonna do to you now. Skirted the whole thing. Let me tell you what I'm gonna do to you. I am who I am. Everybody knows me, but I got something for you. I'm gonna make an example out of you. And like I said before, Busby is going to find out. Tell you a story real quick. So when I was working at TMZ, the whole Kaepernick Roc Nation thing was going on. And there was, like, I was motioned over to somebody's desk and they were telling me stuff about Colin Kaepernick. They were saying stuff. They were like, hey, Colin Kaepernick doesn't really want to play. Colin Kaepernick is this and this and that and blah, 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 and all of this stuff. And I have been hearing this narrative go around from other places.
Yeah.
Like about
I've heard that too.
Ways that he messed up and all of that stuff. I've been hearing it go around. I remember I'm at this person's desk. I'm like, we shouldn't publish this story. Like, we shouldn't do this story just because if we publish this story and give any type of insight on what he wants to do or how he's acting, if we publish this, then we're taking a stand in the fight between Colin Kaepernick and the NFL. Right? And I'm like, it's probably not a good idea. So we didn't publish it. Moments later, another story came in. And that story was the fact that Jay-Z was interested in buying an NFL team. And that the thing that he was doing with the NFL was a pathway and a roadmap to him getting an NFL team. Now, this was in the midst of him going back and forth with Kaepernick over the fact that he had decided to work with the NFL, right? And he was being made to look bad. What I'm saying is that both of those stories were coming from Roc Nation to TMZ. Both the story that was going to be damaging to Colin Kaepernick was coming from Roc Nation. And then the story that was trying to position it as if Jay-Z was going to get a chance to buy an NFL team. And you can look that up. That was also coming from Roc Nation.
Why would Roc Nation want to send information that Colin Kaepernick didn't really want to play football, et cetera, et cetera?
To make him look bad.
Because
he was in a back and forth with Jay-Z.
I remember when that was happening, and some people on the ground were telling me that there was some tension, but that Jay was actually trying to help Colin get an NFL job, and then there was some fallout about that afterward. Certainly the whole, we're past kneeling quote didn't help calm the tensions. But I do remember that drama. I think part of why I'm asking this question is because I don't think the audience sometimes understands, if you're not in this business, sort of what happens behind the scenes, how much of the stories that we just happen to discover are very carefully orchestrated and organized, and how many celebrities are 10 steps ahead of any story that comes out about them and making it happen, particularly the powerful ones.
But understand though, what I'm saying right now, that doesn't necessarily have to even cross Jay-Z's desk. He might not even know about how those media games are getting played. They might be being played on his behalf. Right. His currency is both in actual dollars, right? Like, I'm super rich. I'm Jay-Z. I got all of this money. But the Jay-Z is richer than anyone in hip hop in cultural currency. That's the thing that's most valuable to him. He's richer in cultural currency. He's richer in I don't ever take a loss. I win all the time. I get all of this. He's richer in that than anyone. And anything that's going to cost him that type of currency, he's going to the mattresses. So the thing between him and Cap was a situation to where people had deified Colin Kaepernick for the stance that he took against the NFL, and rightly so, right? People had deified him for that. And when Jay-Z started to work with the NFL, or Roc Nation started to work with the NFL, people were pissed off. And when I watched it, oh, well, they were kind of trying to do him a little bit. But that's how the game goes. And so what I'm saying is that if that's the case with Cap, who, like him, love him, or hate him, he got his career ruined for taking a stand against police brutality. That's just the facts. Maybe he didn't do everything in the particularly right way that people would have wanted him to do it.
He absolutely did not.
And I get it, right? And maybe there are all kinds of things, but brass tacks is he decided, I don't like police brutality. I'm going to kneel for the flag, and they conspired to take his livelihood away from him. They corporately lynched him, and that's just a reality of it, right?
You mentioned corporate lynchings. I want to bring up a comment that someone wrote here. Xavier B wrote it and said, Puffy sued liquor company. Who did Jay-Z upset? The implicit argument here is that Diddy's in jail because he sued Diageo. And the idea that whatever is going on with Jay-Z is because he pissed off some powerful person. Are we incapable of holding people in our community accountable without always having a conspiracy theory where they were about to buy a network or take down a liquor company, or that somebody's mad? And again, I'm not saying that to say that Jay-Z's guilty. I actually happen to think that this story needs to be unpacked, and nothing about this story right now makes me say, oh, guilty, because I don't trust BuzzFeed. I don't even know if there is a person. I don't even know if there is really a Jane Doe behind this this documented unscrupulous lawyer. But I do know that famous people do shit wrong. And I do know that sexual assault really does happen. And it seems like whether it's Bill Cosby or Diddy, we get into this mode where we like, nah, they were running for president. That's why they doing it. There's always a thing. What does that mean?
It's mythology. It's been going on. I've heard that narrative longer in my life than I've heard anything else. And it comes from something that's very real. It comes from the fact that we know that we had a thriving community in Greenwood, and they dropped bombs from planes and then use urban renewal to destroy it. We know that they've used the medical industry. We know that they've used the media. We know that they've used housing discrimination, food discrimination, environmental discrimination. We don't have a handle about what they won't do. So if someone says they would do this just because a black man got too powerful, we can't say that they wouldn't, because they've done worse. Like, we can't say that they wouldn't. The only thing that gets lost sometimes in this is when the victims and the people that we're talking about are also black. Now, I'm not saying that victims come from a situation to where there's a hierarchy, but I'm always interested in the situation when someone says they're doing this to a black man to take down a black man, and the gaggle of people who are accusing this person of misconduct are black women. Or this is and so to me, I see a lot of hypocrisy in that. But in terms of, do black people ever do bad stuff? Yeah, we do. But when a powerful black man falls, we're looking to see who is trying to trip him. I can't hear you.
It worries me that we then end up just closing ranks around the black man at the expense of that black woman. I mean, look at Clarence Thomas. And Clarence Thomas has done more harm to our community just being on that bench than most people have the capacity to do in a single lifetime.
Without doubt.
He was garbage going in. He was garbage when George H.W. Bush appointed him. And we still stood with him and against Anita Hill, because we seemed committed to having him win, or at least to seeing her lose when these conversations come up, when these conversations come up about sexual violence and sexual assault. And it seems like that happens over and over and over again. Now with Bill Cosby, they were white women largely, but there was a way that there were some black women in there too, though. But there was a way that, again, it was like, look, we hear all these allegations. They seem kind of credible. Even Bill Cosby's own deposition, he's like, yes, I gave them this thing, these drugs under these circumstances. I mean, and yet we're still like, yeah, but he made the Cosby Show. Yeah, he's going by NBC. And it concerns me. Busha Bandaloo writes in and says, no, Mark, Clarence Thomas is not the problem. Okay, Busha Bandaloo.